All right, welcome everybody. If you're just joining today, we are going to be interviewing Hal Cato. He is the CEO of the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. As you guys know, we've been doing some extraordinary work with them. So while Erica is conducting this interview, if you have any questions, please add them in the chat box. I will be monitoring those questions and I will notify them so that they can see those. We've got about 1 minute until we get started. We'll let everybody get settled. But welcome everybody. So glad to have you on the call today. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to be interviewing Hal Cato. Again, he is the CEO of the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. Erica, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and we'll get started with the interview.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? We getting some kind of thumbs up. We good. All right. Well, I'm so happy to be here with you all today. As you know, we've been doing these Ask Me segments with members of our local community who specifically touch what we call typically our systems partners, right? So we've had Dr. Ariola, our director of health. Many of you who were with us in the fall, we did a town hall with Brittany Irby. Brittany is actually going to come back in a couple of weeks to sort of put a bookend to some of those conversations. And today I'm really excited to be joined by Hal Cato, the CEO of the Community Foundation, absolutely not a stranger to the village. And I'm really excited because, you know, Hal, we've had a journey together. There's been many organizations, Hands on Nashville, the Oasis Center, that Hal has charted a path forward for. And as a young professional in this city, those are also organizations that I gravitated towards, missions that align with mine. And the way in which the work was happening in community seemed to resonate with me in meaningful ways. So I'm really excited to get to a chance to sit down and chat a little bit. I know we're always running and passing and checking off boxes, but I hope you get to relax a little bit and enjoy this time with the village.
Thank you. I will.
How tell us a little bit about yourself. How would you like to introduce yourself in this space with the village today?
So it would not be about my title. It would be Hal Cato. I'm a native Nashvilleian that grew up here. That's in a fairly turbulent household. My parents, but I had a grandmother who was my rock and safe space. Who nurtured, I think, that first my North Star starting as a little boy, you know. And I was telling the story this morning to another group, you know. She took me, you know, she was big volunteer at Senior Citizens back when that was called that, before it came 54. Went there for her for years and years. I remember specifically as a little boy in the fourth grade, we made cupcakes and cookies and all these things together. And I was assigned a senior who was going to be this was at Christmas. I was assigned a senior who was going to be my buddy. And as luck would have it, I got there and she was a severe diabetic. So I'm sitting home this plate of food thinking, I'm supposed to be bringing this to her Christmas. I got nothing. And I remember Eric, I remember her saying, honey, I don't need any of that. I just want to see you. I just need you. Wow. Your presence is enough. Fourth grade, I still talk about this story because I think that seeded something in me that's defined my leadership journey ever since then. Now, there have been times when it's gone, you know, almost dark and completely cold and then ignited. but I have just always, since I was a little boy, been drawn to people, and places and who are just sort of unseen, unheard, underserved. And that's what makes me get up out of bed every morning. I I'm married. I've had a husband that we married right after Supreme Court made illegal, so 10 years there. Stepdaughter and four grandchildren,
Yeah.
and lots of other my own kids from the Oasis Center days who, I still talk to today and am a part of their child's life. So
I've enjoyed watching that journey
yeah.
unfold in so many ways. Um, that the senior ink resonates with me. I don't know if you knew this, I went to a Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
and we, as a part of the diocese, we would go and visit different parts of the Catholic their church there. And my favorite part was going to sing at the senior citizens home. And I remember just how appreciative, but it also felt like I didn't have the words when I was little, but it felt like there was a real need that I was unaware of, right? Like there was something magical about this space that was fulfilling, but also necessary in a way that we didn't really have systems.
And I didn't have words for it then, but looking back at that age in my life, I felt invisible, and so were they. And so there was just a connection there that now I can claim it in hindsight, but
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I want to move us along because there's some really great questions that the village members have. And so I'm curious, especially because you and I share a lot of spaces together that, in the larger ecosystem are connected, but can be sort of isolated in action and function. Um, that also means that you have to have your finger on the pulse of a lot of things in our community, not only because of the function of your role, but also how folks see you, the insight that they expect from you, the understanding that's necessary in order for your work to continue to be impactful. So, what's sitting with you right now? I'm laughing because he slid the new map over to me just before we started.
Yeah, literally 10 minutes ago, I saw the new map, so that's sitting with me hard. I'm going to have to study that later. What is sitting with me right now is the fact that, it's like there are days I'm up on top of the press box, and I'm looking out on the field, and I'm seeing this side of the field with 1,200 plus nonprofits, 35 something issue based coalitions, hundreds of millions of philanthropic capital, endless studies,
All of them.
all the studies. And then, over here, you've got, homelessness up 26% in a year. We just know what the cost of living, everything is doing in this town. 8 out of 10 people can't afford to buy a house in Nashville anymore. And I'm just seeing, we don't have a caring problem. I think we got a lot of people who care. And as you and I have talked about this, we have a coordination problem.
Yeah.
And so that is really sitting hard with me. I could easily just sit in my position for the next however many years and just kind of phone it in, but I can't unsee that. And I know that the answer, if we don't act on it, this coordination ought to do something, it's not, status quo. It's that those numbers become the ceiling. It's just, so that's what's sitting with just something light.
Nothing major, Hal.
Nothing major.
Nothing major.
Just connect between all the moving pieces.
What I'm considering, even as you say, we don't have a caring problem, we have a coordinating or coordination problem. And I think there's a little bit of an asterisk there. How are we translating our care into coordination? Because I do think, especially at an elected official level and those who are maybe in some decision-making seats, that there is care and there's true also a lack of coordination, but maybe what community is asking for is for that care to translate into some tangible coordination and not just the ask or the hypothesis right around their care, but how does that care translate? And so let's dive in. One of the places where Shekinah, I think initially when she reached out and got curious, was really around your leadership. Folks turn to you. the role of a community foundation is to hold such a wide, gallon pool of the issues in our community, but also the hope and aspirations of our community. And you've been on a journey that you have not opted for the easy issues to tackle the easy issues. So I want to start here primarily because it's come up in our design team conversations. How do you define leadership? And then we're sort of going to go on this little leadership journey or trajectory with you.
Uh, Simplest definition of leadership is the ability to cast a compelling vision and that people want to follow.
Mm.
That has nothing to do with title or position or anything. It's about action.
Mm-hmm.
It's like faith without works is dead. Leadership without action is not leadership. I know a lot of people who call themselves leaders, but you turn around and nobody's following you. That's not exactly leading. So I think that is really, really just the cleanest, purest definition of leadership.
Okay. And so with that in mind, and you started as a part of your introduction talking about, maybe those places where people are unseen, where there may be, you say often find the good and let's sort of praise it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious in how your philosophy around leadership, especially as an action word, how that translates into the ways in which you amplify, recognize, create pathways for some of that non-traditional leadership within our community.
I think especially because, leading Oasis Center, leading Thistle Farms. I mean, I feel like I kind of go from one level of ropes course difficulty to the next, at Community Foundation. And to me, it is that leadership in that sense, it starts with presence and not strategy. I made the mistake early on in my Oasis Center, early that first year. I came in hard with strategy and ideas and things we had to fix. They didn't know me. I wasn't that present because I was always out trying to meet with people and come back and say, here's what I heard, here's what we need to do. But they didn't know me. And so that, it's trust is built slowly and intentionally. And I think when you're working with non-traditional leaders, especially, who most authority figures have just let them down.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility. And I learned the lesson in Oasis. It took a minute. And I think it's what allowed me to walk into Thistle Farms. That was a scary job. Here's the first man who'd ever really worked there. And here comes this middle-aged white guy who looks like everybody who's just bought, sold, and abused me. And they never had a CEO before. It was like somebody handed me this fragile crystal ball that I had to carry, like 24/7. But what I loved about it was they had an interview team. The final interview team was not board members, it was a group of survivors. So they had set a table, and Becca was really good about it, empowering that table, that there's some real decision-making ability here. So I think that became really, really important to me. I think, it's important, we don't have a shortage of non-traditional leaders in this town. What we have a shortage of is institutions willing to listen to them.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what I feel is my job at Community Foundation, is bringing that couple of decades of experience, learning the most, from the margins, and building really successful organizations with them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I'm curious about that. We haven't had systems, institutions, even pathways. I think to the language I've been using is, how do we curate the right value proposition for the wealth of knowledge and the different types of capital that those non-traditional leaders bring into spaces. Do you have examples of what that looks like in your work? And I know it's a slow roll. It's from, having bite-sized conversations with folks over time and then creating sort of those pathways. But can you give us an example of where you have been able to sort of bring the way we have been socialized to see and understand power constructs and hierarchy, and where you have been able to sort of bridge and bring those non-traditional leaders into those spaces.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I don't feel like I've been able to do it effectively yet at Community Foundation. And it bugs the shit out of me. Because I'm up against just some entrenched systems
Yeah.
that don't want to pass the mic, or if they do, it's going to be very performative. You know, but some of the purest forms of that was honestly at Oasis Center, and how Oasis Center truly believed and leaned into that mission. Whereas, to the point where, you have young people, studying the impact of predatory lending in East Nashville and testifying before Metro Council and getting in front of the school board and releasing studies on college on the brain and literally creating a first college access center. So I think we've seen it happen. It just takes someone willing to get out of the way, to pass the mic intentionally, but also to call out leadership when you see it. I would see all the time at women at Thistle Farms, they knew what they weren't good at. They knew what they're bad at, but nobody ever really lifted up and praised what they're good at. What you just did, that is leadership. Call it out, so that they can see it and believe in it. I don't know how we get there in this at a city level. Especially in traditional philanthropy.
I see a couple more folks have joined the call. Y'all are in the corner of my screen. If you have additional questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box, and Ashley will be sure to filter those and make sure that we are able to get them over to Hal, because I do want to get to a place where I'm asking you, I'm going to seed it now so you have a little bit of time. What does passing the mic look like for our Black nonprofit leaders in this moment in time? So we'll sort of come back there, but I want to make sure if anyone has questions in the virtual room, that you're able to provide those as well. Let's talk a little bit more about you've actually shared a little bit about your leadership journey. If there's anything else there that you would like to highlight, we'd love to hear about it.
No, I mean, the only thing I would highlight, people don't realize that I spent about 11, 12 years in the private sector. I started Hands-on National right out of college. And interesting enough, back to senior citizens, I did it because I had made the commitment to pick up my grandmother's Meals on Wheels route when she died, and did that, took care of her. But then it got to be too much, so I started recruiting to do Meals on Wheels route. And so that became Hands-on Nashville. But I was at the time helping to found a company that built and operated on-site childcare centers for big employers, and became really successful. And we were acquired in the late 90s. It's now known as Bright Horizons. It's based in Boston, biggest childcare company in the world. And I got eat up with it, where it was about the right suit, the right car, the right this, the right that. They moved me to England for a few years to open up their UK operations. And I hit the wall. I realized that I just was so lost. I lost myself. And in reflecting, the things that had always made me the happiest were the stuff I was doing on the side.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a little book called Let Your Life Speak by Parker Palmer, and I've given out probably hundreds of copies of that book. And there's a definition in there, vocation, by Frederick Buechner, that place where the heart's deep gladness meets the world's deep need. And I remember clear day sitting in that park bench thinking, I got neither. I need to go. It's time to leave. And it's hard. I had a flat overlooking the Thames, and I was going to Paris on the train. Living a life, but I was living a life that was not my own. And I'm so grateful for that moment, because it led me, back to the States and into Oasis Center, where I found my calling.
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey. between hands-on Nashville after college and overseas and then back into this. And one of the places that Community Foundation has really helped me to, one, better articulate, but also I think challenge us to consider what the opportunities are, is around thinking about capital, the capital that we have to offer, and beyond just the financial capital, which is important, but those other types of capital. And I think especially for the village, right, we are curating not only the space where folks are able to actualize and materialize their capital, but also the systems that recognize the value in that social capital and their in our relational capital. So if you were to sort of share with us in this moment how you see yourself, the institutions that you're connected to and where you have influence, how are you leveraging your Smurf capital right now on behalf of what, and to what end, and why is it important?
Oh, I love that question. Everybody's familiar with Smart Capital. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, yeah, we're all good.
Mhm.
So it's interesting because people look at Community Foundation, they look at our balance sheet, and they see $900 million in assets.
Yeah.
Actually, the F is the smallest form of capital that we have. Of that 900 million, maybe 4 to 5 we can truly push out. That's a tiny. Everything else is endowed. It's scholarships. It's donor directed. It doesn't mean we can't influence, but we have very, very, very little true financial capital. So I have to lean into the others. I'm really leaning into there. There had never been a concerted table of foundation leaders who get together on a regular basis, talk about the issues facing the city, who's funding what the ideas are, where there are hotspots, what's in trouble. So intentionally curating that table that we meet once a month. I think that is, that is a form of social capital. In curating really good relationship with the Chamber of Commerce and some other institution, mending a lot of fences with United Way. So who are those key partners that we need to move forward on the big issues? So I think social capital is probably where I'm spending most of my time. We got lots of little rafts. So how do we create, get them all tethered together to create one big raft? I think, one of my favorite moments that I've got to is really kind of exercising that moral capital opportunity when literally a year ago this week, the ice raids hit Nolensville Road, and in one night, over 100 people were picked up for no reason. And we got out on a limb, and it almost broke, and I got a lot of criticism, but it was the right thing to do. I think when we can exercise.
Sorry, can you make it a little bit explicit what that limb was? What
the limb was, yeah. So there was, suddenly we were getting calls from Turton Connection. They're like, we're going to need money. We're going to need grant funding for these families whose loved ones have disappeared. They don't know how they're going to pay their rent. They don't know how they're going to get, And so we created the Belonging Fund to raise money that would help support individuals whose lives had been really impacted. And it was all direct assistance things, helping them with food, groceries, diaper. I mean, it was everything from pull-up diapers to plane tickets back to South America and everything in between. But as you can imagine, a lot of people didn't like that, and the hate letters and the death threats and you're helping the rapists and the illegals and all of that.
That was a real fun moment.
That was fun. Yeah, that was a treat. And standing next to the mayor, which I got a lot of criticism for. So I learned a lot in that moment. But also when I'm done with Community Foundation one day, I think it'll be one of my moments I'm most proud of how we stood in that gap. And then honestly, as it relates to when I think of the reputational capital, I think that's where fiscal sponsorship opportunities come in. So how we can use our reputation and our connections to look, here's a really cool thing here and elevate that. And that's really what I've committed to playing that partner for the village going forward in terms of just really lifting up and finding opportunities. Hazel, we can work together on some of these issues, but B, how can we shine a spotlight?
We early in the transition of the village to community foundation, I found myself, and we found ourselves sort of talking about it as a greenhouse, and knowing that as a seedling or an adolescent, plant, that we needed deeper roots. We need to see what the fruit was that we can produce, and that sort of analogy of the greenhouse emerged naturally, but also was quite fitting. There is and remains a certain level of protection, of extra nutrients, right? That the work of the village has been able to benefit from the relationship with the community foundation. And it is also presented its own risks, right? And its own challenges and its own need for negotiation, to really figure out the best way to be in right relationship. And so I'm going to move on to a few of the questions that some of the village members asked earlier, and you mentioned one, which is fiscal sponsorship. So can you talk to us about, like, what does fiscal sponsorship mean in this landscape? And then what historically the role of a community foundation in relation to fiscal sponsorship, and then, like, what are those pros and cons? Because beyond community foundation,
no, there's good upsides and downsides to it. Again, like, I had to boil it down to, like, what is fiscal sponsorship in a sentence or two? It is when you partner with another 501c3 who can receive donations on your behalf for the work that you want to do. It's now that's at a bare minimum. I mean, there are different levels from merely receiving donations on your behalf to fund your work to fiscal sponsorships where we may be managing a coalition or a group that's multiple, like the Early Education Coalition, for example, where you've got multiple players under Community Foundation's umbrella.
Yeah.
But it's not just one organization. There's a lot, up to seeding a brand new nonprofit that they're waiting on their C3. And you provide the supports and the resources that they need to get going. I think, for small and emerging organizations, it makes a whole lot of sense. It allows you to start raising money immediately, to not worry about the payroll, financial systems, audits, the accounting, the reporting, all of that. You're not trying to build that at the same time as you're building a vision and a program model and all of that. So it's a definite upside. The downside, I think the only downside I can see, probably a lot, but the one that comes to mind, you're coming inside another organization's culture. And you got to be really careful that those cultures are aligned, because you don't want to get up and suddenly, like, who's this landlord I got here? What are they doing? And so making sure that there are conversations about that, and that who you're partnering with, and that there is an easy exit strategy if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, the other things that have come up, that I know some of our village orgs have experienced and that we've navigated. I mean, you are coming into another organization's culture, and that means a lot of things. It means how you are able to process payments, et cetera, is filtered through that organization's process. So having some clarification on what their payment timeline looks like as you're working with your vendors is super, super important, especially for orgs that are maybe have been used to sort of being able to move things, how they need to move things. The other thing is the sort of public facing priorities, and how that either can amplify a message for or the priorities of organizations or focus areas, or how it can be a point where there needs to be some terms of negotiation and some consideration. One of the coalitions, for instance, that's fiscally sponsored, that at the village, I know that ED has said there was a moment where they had to figure out where the sort of alliance exists, and if there was a values rub, right, against some of the decisions for that organization to move. Very plainly, that someone that you're fiscally sponsored may be a proponent of something that
100%.
you're saying you're not touching that at all, and being willing to work through those, not only culture, but sort of values oriented action items is super important.
Yeah, we've developed a whole new sort of MOU and checklist for fiscal sponsorships, because we were it was a little loosey-goosey for us. So we're really tightening that up. And you also have to think of, there's some fiscal sponsorship fees can vary great. And there's some organizations where fiscal sponsorships it's a revenue item.
Yeah.
That's not the case for CFMT. It's part of our of a community service. So that, they can range from, 1 to 2 points at CFMT up to I've seen 5 to 10
Yeah.
at other places. So.
Yeah. And for village members who are keeping track, a few of the metro government departments, I know Metro Arts is one of them, have now built into their RFP process where they will allow you to add extra dollars to your projected budget for fiscal sponsorship. And so there is this, again, connecting, caring, and coordination. It seems like there is at least interest on some of those government departments that have especially been challenged around some equity issues to see the value of fiscal sponsorship in a different way and build the right systems, because it is a tool, but we have to have the processes in place to support the tool.
That's good to know that. Yeah.
Next question that came from our village members. This is one that I know day one of my walking into CFMT, this question was there. What's the door? What's the door nonprofit to funders? And so my question to you is around how can our nonprofit leaders develop the type of relationships that are necessary given the way our current funders are socialized in our society. We know that our funders are highly relational based. Many of them have the same leaders that have been in charge my entire career here in this city. And so that means something, right? It's more than just how can make an introduction to Erica. There's a deep bench of relationships. So what are some of those strategies for our nonprofit leaders who understand the game as the rules are currently written and also are doing really good work and need access to those dollars?
So just some tips for,
how
you get in that room and then how you, yeah.
What's the bridge?
So what's the bridge? Okay, a couple of thoughts. Number one, you got to be able to tell your story with confidence. Be ready. Don't go into any kind of meeting with a funder without that clear and compelling vision for what you're trying to do, knowing the problem you're trying to solve. You'd be amazed at how many people I meet with that can't articulate the problem they're trying to solve while they're best suited to do it. And the power that they bring as a leader who's lived experience informs what they work. Funders are getting more sophisticated to that now. They know, they honor that. Before it would have been like a pat on the head. I think they are aware enough to know how valuable that is. But you got to have the goods. You got to have, the model, and you've got to have the story down packed. Who else is in this space? How we differ? How we work with them? What makes us unique? There's a whole, I call it the idea frame. And if I've not done it in the village, I'd love to do it sometime, for just how to think through your story in about 8 different folders and being clear on that, so that when you get into the room, you're ready. Don't go to the room if you're not ready, because you may only get one chance. What you said, I think, is really important. Get in the room before you need something. Relationships that are built on an ask are transactional. Relationships built on, here's my idea, here's my vision, here's what I'm trying to do. Coach me, give me your insight and advice so that I can make it better. I mean, that's where the transformational comes in. So they see your journey. Lord, I started Hands on Nashville as a 23-year-old. Do you know how many rooms I was in where I got sent back out? Yeah.
I literally sit back out.
And I just started learning how to, ask for advice. The old adage, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. There's a lot of truth there.
Yeah. Okay. You've named twice now, when you get in the room. How do we get in the room, Adam?
How do you get in the room? You find those opportunities where there are going to be convenings or gatherings, and donors are going to be there. Look for those opportunities through CNE or any other place. But I'll be honest, also, they will meet with you.
Mm.
They will
help demystify that for us.
demystify that again. My name's Cato. I have here's my background. I have a vision. Could I have 30 minutes of your time to talk to you about what I'm going to do? There's no ask here. You just have to be willing to get out there. And sometimes it takes multiple times, but I don't know many foundation leaders, and I know them well, who would say no to that. Now, they may tell you something you don't want to hear. I can't help that, but that's why you got to be ready when you get in that room. I also think it's where opportunities, I mean, you have a lot of social capital in this town. I do, finding those people whose reputational capital can help open those doors. But it's also at the same time, it is hard because foundations don't like to bet money on new things.
Yeah. Say more than.
So they don't. They just like, I need to see, a couple years operating experience. I need to see, it's just, you don't see a lot of them who will do that. However, some will, especially if it's a small grant. Many of them, 20,000 or under, they don't have to take to their board.
Right.
They have discretionary grant making capacity. If they see something really here promising an opportunity, they can do that. So looking for those who can give those smaller grants that don't require board decision.
Yeah. A lot of the rooms early in the village's sort of tenure at Community Foundation, what I was hearing from the Donors Forum and other folks is, we don't want to fund anything new.
Yeah.
No new friends, no new nonprofits.
That's real.
And where is, I think this is how we started to translate the language, where folks were seeking proof of collaboration. They were seeking some type of demonstration of your willingness, our willingness to hold hands with another organization that was doing that work or project or initiative. Can you like pull back the veil there? What's the why for that? Especially for someone who has built something that they love so dearly, and we are holding on to it tight because it is a outpouring of our passion, sometimes our lived experience, etc. What's the opportunity that we could hear in the no new friends, no new organizations, and how are you working with? Because you and I both know a lot of times that feels like competition. And so give us tag us in, coach, on the other side of that. How?
I mean, that's where you have to be more in love with the problem than you are your solution. And a lot of people are so in love with their solution, they can't get beyond that. But if you love the problem more than your solution, and you recognize that problem, these other three people are trying to do it, also address it. And I think what I've got could make yours better and vice versa. That's what's going to make it work. If you're so in love with your idea and your solution and what's been, maybe placed on your heart, those are blinders that are not helpful in this particular point in time, when the gap between those who are thriving and those who are barely surviving is just getting bigger and bigger. But it's not getting bigger and bigger. New foundations.
Right.
You're not seeing new foundations come to town. We're seeing lots of nonprofits, but the philanthropic assets are not growing. And then they can even do the opposite if there's a bad stock market.
Right. And
suddenly, their assets decrease, so their 5% or whatever payout next year is going to be smaller. So it's just it's an art, and I hate that it's that hard, but it just.
I have real opinions, but I'm gonna keep those to myself. This is for the interview purposes.
Yeah.
But I am curious there about that bridge. We know the village designed even a game for CFMT staff where we compared the numbers, fundraising dollars, number of individual donors, major campaigns run. We compared the numbers average for the typical Nashville nonprofit, and then we just did one for the village. Yeah. And so we know that there's a stark difference. What is the opportunity in 2026 given what you know to be true about philanthropy, where we are seeing our corporate partners lean in or not, how individual donor streams are going. Like, give us a assessment of the possibilities to help bridge that resource gap for Black-led and Black-serving nonprofits, given everything that we know to be true. And while you're thinking, I did, Philanthropy Southeast leadership cohort last year. And my goal there was to see what was possible. Like, one, I want to understand what this philanthropy world really is like outside of our silo. And so I got to, I said the tour. We did the tour of the South. That was hard, but we did the tour of philanthropy across the South. And there are some trends, but there are some trends that are helpful, but there's also some trends that I think are that we as a city are living in a moment of extreme tension. We are not seeing new foundations. We have seen a decrease in corporate sponsorships. Like, those are the realities, right? So what's the bridge for us? What's possible given what you know to be true about the philanthropic landscape?
Um, Building a tremendous amount of peer power.
Yeah.
I think, it starts there. The kind of peer power that really can't be ignored. I think you got to be ruthlessly clear about what you do. I see a lot of times leaders who try to take on too much because the need is so great. And even just one individual, one family. I mean, so you got to be really, really clear about what you're trying to do and and again, articulating the most powerful tool any of us have is a clear, compelling vision.
Mm-hmm.
Those break through, and I have watched, it's been a joy to watch, how Creative Girls Rock has aligned herself with people and institutions that are, she's navigating that maze, but it takes a lot of being willing to share power, and trust that can be scary, because it's your baby and you care a lot about it. I get it, but again, it's you loving solution. I mean, loving the problem more than your solution. I the family foundations are the harder ones. I'm going to be honest, because most of the time I know these folks. They get it. The people leading CEOs of EDs, of foundation, everything. They understand.
Okay.
They understand. Their trustees who approve. It's not their money. It's this family's money. So they're just an in between.
Right.
And so the more that they're equipped to tell your story and represent it in a way, because they don't really have that, they're the gatekeeper, but they're not the check writer. Some of the foundations that have community boards, the original donors out of the picture, there's now a community board like a Maddox or Healing Trust or some of those, you'll see they are more open and progressive and willing to take a chance on smaller nonprofits as opposed to a private family foundation.
Yeah.
So you just got to know, and there's some doors it's not going to open.
It's not. You can knock as much as you want.
It's not going to open. So don't even.
And folks are shifting their interests, right, and their priorities. Center for Nonprofit Management has been going through its own sort of recalibration. And we have also seen some funding shifts, right, associated with that. And so I think there's also a getting curious about if those dollars are not going to grow, how are they reprioritizing them? And understanding that as well. There was a second question that I wanted to ask about the funding space, but it's not coming to me now. Have we had any questions come in from the audience before I close this out? No. All right, y'all, we have a few more minutes. If anyone has a question for Hal, we would love to take that on. But I'm curious about the ways in which we can continue to equip you to be a champion for the village, and sort of what are you hopeful for about given this landscape as you passed me the map before we started. One of, as we've been doing our strategic plan, and getting really clear about our theory of change and where we have impact. We know that we are building capacity. We know that we are changing systems, and we are building power. And you even named, pure power that can't be ignored. What are you hopeful for about this body of work? You have to believe something enough to say yes for it to land at the Community Foundation, and for the level of investment that the Community Foundation has to date, and will continue to provide. So one, I'm curious about, what do you see that gives you hope that this work, and I've heard you say this is necessary. So like, why is it necessary? What gives you hope about what will be different? And then what are the ways that you will continue to champion this work?
I think, looking, we all know that the big challenges Nashville faces.
Mm-hmm.
And so ways that the village can use your peer power to offer, you're the bridge between the institutions that are trying to crack the code and the need on the ground. Um, especially, as it relates to upward mobility opportunities, creating a true workforce development system. That's a pretty wonky word, but that's something we just don't have. Again, here's the problem, and we can help you identify how many foundation dollars are going into those problems each year. What's the solution that the village can collectively offer that's clear, that people can understand and get excited about? So it's almost like turning the bridge around to you, and what is it that you offer? I think, there's no village. I know it's not a monolith.
Right.
There's a lot of individuals working on different issues, but what's the crux of it? But for the village, Nashville could not.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure that out together.
Mm-hmm. I have a bonus question for you. We set the Community Foundation in the village has been the phone a friend in many instances for Metro government, for our mayor's office, for the health department, for the budget committee, especially, that I'm thinking about, to shine a light on the fractures in the system. And I'm not saying all the fractures, because we are on the heels of a whole lot of fractures, but specifically dollars being allocated and then landing in the bank accounts of these nonprofits that are intentionally preventing, disrupting, supporting the issues that the different departments that are working on. You jumped into the deep end of the pool there to help figure out, like, what's wrong here. What are the possibilities of sort of mending not only those relationships, but I'm thinking about the pathways for government to see and understand the power of our grassroots organizations, and then the actual levers for those dollars to land in the pockets, the bank accounts of these orgs.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's a lot of things. And there's some leaders in departments of Metro. I'm like, don't knock on that door. You're just wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
But there are others that I think are worth it. And here's the thing about and Metro dollars are getting scarcer and scarcer.
Yeah.
They are. And so Metro is only, the days where council members all had a little slush fund and they could do it. Those are gone. And so the Metro dollars flow to organizations who are truly helping that department fulfill its mission in a way that it can't do on its own,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to again be clearly articulate that their success is dependent upon a strong partnership with you. I think you also have to find leaders who are willing to sort of admit that they need help. I think you've got it at the Metro Health Department. I think of folks like Diane Lance,
Mm-hmm.
Office of Family Safety. Those are the people who they get it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you have to, back to my thing about what's the problem you're trying to solve. How does this align with Metro's problem? And you can't say, well, it's about X. It's really got to be specific to that department's mission.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do.
Especially given the layers of hierarchy, the sort of turnover, and just a culture that is government in itself.
Yeah, government dollars are really, really, really hard. We're getting out of a big contract at CFMT because it didn't work for us anymore, and it was just becoming more punitive than anything else. So we're having to walk away from it.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions, I am curious if you would share with the group. CFMT has been exploring, what is its role as a civic leader? What's its role as a civic engager, convener, et cetera? What is in 3 years from now? And I heard you say very early on, Community Foundation has really been spectacular at the foundation part. How do we live into this community part? And I sort of hung my hat on that for a while, right? If in 3 years under your leadership, given what you know to be true about where the organization is and where the city is, what are you hopeful that Community Foundation has been able to help inform, support, hold up, prop up in our community that would make the work of all of our village orgs more impactful?
Yeah. I cities are built and communities are tended. And a lot of people make a lot of money building asphalt. But the folks who are tending community, there's a lot of good ones out there. Lots of them, but I just again feel like got a lot of people tending on their own little lifeboat.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we tie those lifeboats together to make an impact bigger than any little lifeboat could do on its own? So we're going to cross the ocean with this flotilla and not send a bunch of little dinghies out there trying to do it.
Yeah.
So that's really where I feel most called to as a community foundation, is to make the community more of a community, how we're tying the boats together around some of these bigger issues. And truly holding people accountable and learning how to create a room that when the temperature gets hot, people stay in it and they don't run.
Yeah.
And we're willing to be vulnerable and to talk about what didn't go well, but keep at it. This town's not very good at that.
I know.
I know. It's so painful that we're just not. Again, I don't want to just phone this job in. I want to be able to truly deliver on one of these big issues, and having a partnership with the village around that. I mean, you understand the power of tying the boats together. Is important, and I'm looking forward. With the opportunity now we're working on to bring the village in, and hopefully we'll be the first of many more.
Yeah, and what I do appreciate is you're tying the boats. Is what I've witnessed is I think you've seen where reputation and social capital can take us as a tide, and then there has to be collective investment. Folks have to be willing to say, here's my part of the rope, and we want to tie together. And what I appreciate about this journey with the Community Foundation is, I think we're realizing that there has to be a different route to provide the space, the trust that you named earlier, right? The desire for folks to link those ropes together. And that can't be top down. It can't be because I'm a funder and I said so.
100%.
It can be because it's the only way that you unlock X, Y, and Z. We as a collective body deeply believe in decolonizing our relationships, right? With funders, with the workplace, with the labor, with the dollars. And part of that means we have to be willing to name. And we tell folks all the time, if something needs to be a transaction, let it be a transaction, but don't sort of confuse the transaction with true transformation. There is a journey. And so how do we also make space? And I think that's been part of the learning for Community Foundation, is that we also have to make space for the transformation. We can name that we want transformation, but that means we have to create space to disagree. We have to have supports for folks to deal with some messiness, including some harm that's happened historically. And then we have to be willing for our solution to not be the right solution, but for us to be looking at the problem together.
Right. Right. And you push that up against, like I have a board with an extreme bias for action.
Yep. Yes.
You're just talking.
Yes.
What are y'all doing? You're just talking. So it's a lot of factors there. I do think, last thing I'll say, I do think to the point where, one of the things we've been talking about at CFMT is how we can develop truly a shared language that we can use around, sort of adaptive leadership and adaptive challenges, technical fixes, and we're speaking one language.
Yeah.
It's going to help.
So I have two questions. So let's see if we can get through them. One, what does true systems level change look like to you, and how can nonprofits position themselves to be a part of transformation rather than just responding to need?
In a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Ready, go.
True systems level change only happens. This is a tough one. I'm trying to think how I can articulate this. I mean, true systems level change it takes, all the sectors to come together around it who have a stake in it and have a shared vision. Have the right level of trust in the room, and that there's a sort of just a shared vision for where we're trying to go. Because if you don't have those three things, it's like the three-legged table that falls over. So you've got to make sure that that's in place. You've got leaders who want systems level change and truly understand how that involves sharing power and other habits that just aren't going to be really comfortable for them. I also think, it takes decades.
I was going to say, it's a long, Nicosia, was that you? It is a long game.
Yeah, it's not an election cycle or even 2 election cycles. It's not, a grant cycle. It's a long game.
Yeah.
And funders and everybody just historically not had the attention span to do that happen. We want system change, transformational change. Here's a 2-year grant.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
A couple things I'll add.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I had the same 4 talking points for a year. And those talking points I said to every single person that asked, whether it was a funder, whether it was a council member, whether it was another nonprofit. And for me, being able to understand the entry points for the systems change was rooted in my willingness to only stick to those 4 talking points, because then each person or entity that I encountered gave me their perspective, their entry point, their tension with those 4 things. And that allowed the village to then be proactive in identifying how we do our power analysis. How do we campaign, right? How do we build a campaign out against a very specific cause? And that was some of our sort of systems level changes, mapping your orientation to my 4 talking points. I'll jump to this next question and just see if we can get through it really quickly. And y'all, thank you for joining us if you need to jump off. So Centauria is asking about how small nonprofits lack that bridge capital to handle delay reimbursements from Metro, a game that we know very well. Do you know what work is being developed to provide upfront funding or capacity building grants so that smaller grassroots organizations aren't boxed out of their servicing their own neighborhoods?
Because of reimbursable grants, I think we have to develop, and there's an appetite there. We have to have a revolving pool of reimbursable dollars that will float profits who have a contract. They've got the service needs to start. They just need that capital.
Yeah.
More and more foundations are open to that. I've got a meeting coming up with Healing Trust, Spear, and Maddox around impact investing. We're pulling our finance committees in on it, and loans. It's one of the things on the table.
So, Centauria, this is a great question. I'm glad that there's been movement and there is movement on behalf of the funders in that direction. I will also say that we, as in the body of the village, have been solicited by a number of financial institutions. There's a play that we should run here, that there is some type of investment in a loan pool that can be used for that reimbursement process for our nonprofit.
This is low hanging fruit.
Yeah. We just need to collectively, to that point, identify who are the players. Sam's been asking this question since he rolled into this at Healing Trust. And so I think there are real possibilities. And since Toria, you're asking, I think this is the right entry point, because we know on Metro side, there's so much red tape, right?
Yeah.
Which was part of those 4 talking points, was to even make sure that we know them. This is a big one, and I don't think we are going to be able to answer it, but I would love, how can the co-op business model impact nonprofits?
Say more.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Therese, do you want to take yourself off of mute?
I'd love to hear, what's there.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How y'all doing?
Hi.
Yeah, so as I am going into the co-op business model for my organization, I'm seeing that the shared ownership part, that is the part that nonprofits could actually benefit from. Not just the same services that they keep providing, the same funders that they keep trying to get money from, but an actual ownership. People are more likely to buy into something that they own, that they have made a part of them. So how can we propel a cooperative model that benefits nonprofits?
Social enterprise.
And, like the social enterprise.
It's different. There really is no owner, nonprofit, but as it relates to the true buy-in and believe in is what I think where we're going here. I love this concept, and I saw it out of Richmond, Virginia, and it's just been haunting me ever since. This concept of a declaration of cooperation, and developing a document that you're co-owned and you are all signing. This is what we believe. It is codified it right there for you. I think something like that would be very powerful. I haven't seen it done in Nashville.
I think we just put that as part of the exploration with Urban Institute. I will definitely pull some of those documents and see if that's helpful. But I'm also thinking about when there's shared support services, right? So it may not be shared ownership. It could be collaborative around your operations, right? Are combined. And so there's more capacity with a specific shared investment for nonprofits. I think that's something.
Yeah, and there's a whole network, and I can get this to you, and you can share with it, that does this nationally. I mean, they have a website, they have conferences, and they are just helping nonprofits develop shared systems, shared networks, shared facilities.
Yeah, we actually provided, I think you sent some before, and we provided that to Charmin at Creative Girls Rock when they were thinking about some of their documents with 50 Forward. So I know we are at time. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today. Hal, thank you for hanging out with us at the Village House today and having some dialogue. You all know how to find us. If you have additional questions, I know how to find him. And so please feel free to shoot them my way if things come up and you want us to explore those more. We appreciate y'all. Shekinah and the team will be in touch with some additional follow-ups. Y'all have a real good day and stay safe.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thanks.